So opening today's Spider-Man Homecoming, the 6th Spider-Man movie and the 3rd take on this classic comic book character. You guys asked me to rank the Spider-Man movies, so here we are. So let's do this. Starting off with the Rotten Tomatoes scores. Coming in 6th place is The Amazing Spider-Man 2 with 52%. Coming in number 5 is Spider-Man 3 with 63%, which is interesting because this movie's been kind of crapped on for the last 10 years since it came out. But technically, it is a movie that has a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes. Coming in at number 4 is The Amazing Spider-Man with 72%. Coming in at number 3 is Spider-Man 2002 at 89%. Coming in at number 2 is Spider-Man Homecoming with 93%. That one might go up or down a little bit depending on how the final scores come in. And in first place is Spider-Man 2 with 94%. Now, the interesting thing about the Rotten Tomatoes scores is I think it lines up pretty closely with the general consensus about these movies, but that's just my guess. Go ahead and tell me your list down below in the comment sections with your rankings of all 6 movies, your kind of thoughts on the different actors that played Spider-Man. I'd love to hear your thoughts to see how it kind of corresponds with the Rotten Tomato scores as well as how it goes along with my score. So without further delay, let's get into my ranking of all 6 Spider-Man movies from the worst to the best. Coming in at number 6 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now for me, this is a very weird, bad movie for me because individual scenes I think are great. I think that the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone is phenomenal. If they announced that Marc Webb was going to be directing a rom-com of sorts with those two actors, in rom-com I mean like his movie 500 Days of Summer type rom-com, with those two actors, I would be so on board with that. I think that that would be a phenomenal film that I would love because they are so good on screen together. So whenever there's those romantic moments, the back and forth between them, I loved it. A lot of the visuals and the special effects, the way they were handled, some of the shots in it, I loved. I thought they were just so well done. And so elements of it, scenes in it, I think are great, really great. Some of the best stuff, best moments in the entire franchise of all Spider-Man movies are in this movie. But they're in a bad movie. It's not a good movie. I was even trying to think through how would I describe what the plot of this movie is, and it's Spider-Man is continuing to be Spider-Man as he graduates high school, and him and Gwen break up and get back together again, and Norman Osborn dies, so Harry moves back, and a guy that's a fanboy of Spider-Man falls in a machine and gets powers, and Aunt May's trying to be a nurse, and it's just a bunch of, it's like 7 or 8 subplots all woven together, happening sequentially, but there's not like a through line that you're driving forward on this one story. It's so cluttered with storylines, plot lines, villains. There's a whole thing with Norman or Harry and the company and guys trying to take over, so there's more villains in there too. And then Paul Giamatti as plays into it as the Rhino in parts of it. So much stuff's going on that there's no clear story to it. The tone is so all over the place. So you got these Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone character moments that are really grounded and they feel like two real people having realistic moments. And then you see the Rhino and it's this guy doing that stuff while driving a tank, or not a tank, but driving a truck, and then at the end of it in a robot suit, and then Electro. The whole performance of Jamie Foxx does not fit in this universe at all. It's so cartoony and campy, and like this throwback type nerdy character that belongs in a 50s, 60s comic book, but that's not the take on Spider-Man that they did with this universe. That's not the way Peter Parker is played. That's not the way Gwen is played. That's not the way that Harry Osborn is played. And so it's so uneven in the way things are handled in it. The story's all over the place. And then there'll be these great moments that I love in the romantic plot lines. There's some gorgeous shots in a couple of the action sequences that are amazing. But man, this movie is so all over the place. And all the rumors about Sony interfering and wanting to set up a Sinister Six movie and wanting to incorporate these, set up the world building to do the spin-off movies, and you just feel that throughout the whole movie. And then there's shots that were in the trailers that weren't in the movie. There's so much stuff around this that you just feel is directed by committee. So many studio notes trying to cram so much stuff in there, and the movie we got is not good. And it's really frustrating because I have no issues. Like, I mean, there's could have been something great there. Marc Webb can do amazing things. You can see it in here. There's some amazing shots. So much stuff just drowns this thing out. Hey, Johnny V! Can I call you Johnny?
Not on your life.
Well, sorry, man. Hey, can I tell you about MoviePass?
No!
Okay, well, I'm gonna tell you anyway. So MoviePass is the way I go see all my movies. Here's how it works. I pay $45 a month, and they send me a... Oh, that was dramatic. They send me the card in the mail, and whenever I want to go see a movie, I pull out my phone, open up their app, it's free, select the movie I want to go see in their app, they put the money on the card that you kicked out of my hand, and then I swipe it and it covers it. It's really a great deal. So for $45 per month, you can go see as many movies you want. Just a couple catches in there. First one, you can only see one movie per day. Second one, you can only see any one movie one time. But beyond that, it's just a great deal.
Not bad, partner.
So if you're interested in signing up, please use the link down below in this video. You guys too. It does help out my channel, but this really is the way I go see all my movies, and I do recommend you check it out, Mr. Van Damme. You gonna do it?
It's done!
Oh, that was really fast. Hey, can I get a high five before you go? That was a kick, not a high five. But seriously, guys, it is the way I go see movies. I do recommend it. It's a good deal if you go see enough movies per month to warrant it. I've had a great experience with it, and I think you will too if it's the right service for you. If you're gonna sign up, please consider using that link down below. It does help out my channel. With that said, let's get back to our video.
See you next time.
Coming in at number 5 is gonna be Spider-Man 3. A lot of similar problems to what you have in Amazing Spider-Man 2 of there's great moments in here. There's things that work just as good as what was in Spider-Man 1 and 2. And you can see where they had some ideas of if you've got Spider-Man 1 and he's figuring out how to be Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2 is he's deciding if he wants to be Spider-Man. Spider-Man 3 is he likes being Spider-Man. He's enjoying it. He's seeing the benefits of it. And it's messing with his head. And it's messing... Like you can see where they had the right arc to go with some things. You could see where they were trying to have big emotions. But when you've got 3 villains and they don't tie together quite right, and you can see if you took one of them out, how it could have worked. So I think if you took Sandman out and you just had Peter Parker working with the fact that he is trying to, he has arrogance taking over, and then the symbiote hits him, and so that screws with him, so he's jacked up. And then running parallel, you have this new Green Goblin coming in with Harry that's angry with him, and you could see where this would work together, and then you can have the twist in the end of Harry comes around, realizes the fault of his ways, and joins his friend to defeat Venom. You could see where if that's what the focus of it, you'd have a much cleaner movie that build up the storylines properly, but as is, it's kind of all over the place, and there are things in it that are just bad. So the infamous, most made fun of is, of course, the dance sequence where Peter Parker's upset, filled with the symbiont, and he's walking down the street like, yeah. And then there's a cut forward a few minutes. There's a scene where he's like in a bar dancing, and it's so out of place. It doesn't fit in this universe. It almost does. You almost think Raimi can pull it off. And you can see where maybe they thought they'd earned enough goodwill and they could point to like, look, we did this and this in the previous 2 films. But you can see where the line was here and they went over it. They went too far. And so as you're watching the movie, it's like, ooh, no, this does not work in this movie. But then beyond that, some of the special effects just don't work. And I remember watching it in the theater as someone that loved parts 1 and 2, was so excited for this movie. And then the Sandman stuff didn't look good enough. It's almost there, but it wasn't good enough. And then the one that just killed me was the early in the movie, Peter Parker being chased by a Green Goblin through all the alleys, and the way the green screen has worked, what they went to try and do with it, where there's so much stuff of them flying through alleys and stuff, it does not work. It pulls you out of it because you know you're watching an effect, and it's so clearly, it's just off. And so, and there's a lot, rewatching it a week ago, so many shots in this of people falling and fighting in midair and swinging, and you can just tell it's CGI. You can tell it's people in front of green screens, and it feels like you're watching a cutscene from a video game rather than real people doing something. And so that's always bothered me about this movie. And so overall, this is a movie that rewatching it, it's a lot better than I remembered it being. It's a lot better than its reputation, because people are like, this is a crappy movie. It's just a piece of garbage. Man, emo Peter Parker dancing down the street. And they point to like two things. They point to Topher Grace's Venom, and they have him as Venom, and then the mask comes off, and then there's like this corny Topher Grace thing happening with his face. And that looks stupid, but like it's like you could cut out 3 minutes of this movie and the vast majority of the complaints go away. And it's not great. It doesn't come together the way parts 1 and 2 did, but you have a good movie. Because of some of that stuff, I think it teeters much more of the, it's a very mixed bag of a movie, I think is where it finally lands. But there's some great stuff in here, and the ambition was there. They really tried to do something really cool with this movie, and I just don't think that they were able to pull it off as well as they wanted. Coming in at number 4 is The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, this is a movie that rewatching it, the movie just feels unnecessary. It feels just kind of like, okay, I guess we did that. And the problem is they didn't have a new enough take on it. They didn't have a different enough take. They told essentially the same story as the first Spider-Man. It's the origin story, and a scientist guy unintentionally uses something on himself and he turns evil and has an evil scheme, and Spider-Man has to stop him. And their way of making it different was they made it more angsty. It's not a dark movie, but it's an angsty movie where you're dealing with more emotions, where Peter Parker's getting in fights with his aunt and uncle a little bit more, and there's a tension with him and Gwen's dad, and it's just, angst is a word you would use to describe it. And I don't know if that works well with Spider-Man, or actually, having watched the movie, it doesn't work great with Spider-Man. It feels kind of off. And so they add that into it, and then they went, let's have the secret history of Peter's parents and kind of put some new twists on this. And you watch the movie and you go, Spider-Man doesn't need this. The story doesn't need this. The mythology doesn't need this. And it doesn't work in this movie, and it works even less in part 2. Actually, I forgot that as I was trying to list off all the plot lines in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Oh yeah, by the way, we discovered the truth about Peter's parents and why he became Spider-Man. Even more things I forgot. That's how cluttered that movie is. But none of it is very interesting because Spider-Man worked without needing the secret history of his parents. So when you add it in there, it just feels unnecessary. It feels cluttered. And you just kind of like, why are we doing this? Why are we telling this story? Why are we adding this mythology on top of the mythology? And so that doesn't work. And then once again, it seems like they had too many plot lines going on. And they had this idea in the latter half of the movie of, once he becomes Spider-Man, that the police are out to get him, and Gwen's dad in particular thinks, hey, this guy's a vigilante. He's not following the law. That's what the police are for. We need to stop this guy. And that's interesting, but they didn't really explore it. So you really like the character, you like the idea of it, but they don't go in a direction to where it really makes sense. And it feels like that almost could have been a movie in and of itself, not tacked it onto the origin story, but you make that a part of part 2, is that's the drama of it. And so it's underdeveloped. And you could see where if you took some of the stuff that they end up doing with Spider-Man Homecoming, where Spider-Man's kind of a menace. He's not good at being Spider-Man. And so he screws up quite a bit in Spider-Man Homecoming. And so you could see where if something like that was going on in The Amazing Spider-Man, why the Gwen's dad is out to get him and why he doesn't think he's good at it, and we need to stop this menace. You could see that a lot better, but they don't go in that direction to explore the idea. So it's just kind of like, well, I like the character, I like what he's saying, but I don't necessarily like this plot line. It feels a little bit unnecessary. And so, yeah, overall, it's a movie that's good. It's not necessarily good enough to warrant its existence, but it's a good movie. This is kind of a forgettable movie There's things in it I like. Like I said, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, I really like them together. And some of the dramatic moments, I think Marc Webb's really good with the character moments. But the big story and trying to work with studios who want to work in a bunch of plot lines, I don't know how great he is at that. And so you get another movie that's got too many plot lines. But this one's a lot better than the Amazing Spider-Man 2, but still a lot of issues here that, man, I want to like it a lot more than I do. There's things in it that I really like. And then it's at the whole product as a whole is just not good enough to like be great, to be awesome, to be super memorable. So anyway, there's a pretty big gap between number 4 on my list and my number 3 on my list. So with that said, coming in at number 3 is Spider-Man Homecoming. The one that we just saw last night, at least I saw it last night. I don't know when you saw the movie. I don't even know if you've seen the movie yet. But so for me, there's a kind of a real big jump where the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is kind of pretty way down here for me. And then Spider-Man 3 and the Amazing Spider-Man, for different reasons, are good but flawed movies, and then you jump up quite a bit, and I really like all of these top 3 movies, and then maybe as time passes, I'll move Spider-Man Homecoming up. I don't think so, but perhaps I would. And I'll say this, Spider-Man Homecoming is the most fun of the Spider-Man movies. It's a very different type of story than the other movies, where every other Spider-Man movies tried to tackle kind of big ideas and dealing with the death of his uncle and feeling like a failure, and does he want to be Spider-Man, and people dying all around him. In this one, he's like a teenager that's kind of a screw up, that's in a position to do really cool stuff, and he's kind of delusional and thinking that he's going to be an Avenger and thinking he's more important than he is. But at the same time, he is important, and he's kind of an Avenger. And so it's just dealing with a lot of fun stuff to deal with seeing a teenager in that situation. The story's a lot smaller. There's not like someone trying to blow up the city or something like that. It seems like a much smaller scale story, and that fits what they're trying to do with the themes of it, of exploring this idea of, is he good enough? Is he worthy of being a superhero? So the story is about him proving himself with a smaller type story, and that smaller type story involves him growing up and a main villain that is the Vulture. That's in many ways, he's like the Walter White of the MCU. He's a guy that's decides to break bad and go evil to take care of his family, and seems to turn evil at some point in time, but still loves his family. And so it's just an interesting take for the MCU, both in that he's the main villain, the way the story plays out. So it makes for just a really nice mix, a nice change of pace for a comic book movie that's not trying to, save the world, stop an alien invasion. There's no sky beam. There's no garbage cloud all over the city. And so it makes for a very different type movie that I really enjoyed. I thought it was a lot of fun. Some people thinking the Marvel humor's out kind of getting over the top here, and I think it fit here because it's a bunch of quirky, smart aleck teenagers that pick on each other a lot. And that's what they do. They're quirky, they're weird, and teenagers are a ton of fun. And that's what you see in this movie. And so I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. And even that it's number 3, it's almost nostalgia, almost warrants that I have to put my 1 and 2 picks where they're at. But it's so much fun, and I'm glad it exists. And even part of the reason it's number 3 is because the ambition of it is, it's not as ambitious and doesn't tackle some bigger things as my number 1 and 2 picks. And I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad it's the type of movie that it is, that they did something different, that we have variety in our Spider-Man movies, that this one doesn't tackle the origin, Uncle Ben dying at all. And so all in all, I really enjoyed this movie. It's a ton of fun. I can't wait to rewatch it with my wife and my son, who just walked in the door. Hey, Liam, you wanted to join me real quick?
No, I'm getting something.
Oh, just grabbing something? That's cool. I'm going to keep talking then, okay? Deal. All right. So anyway, that's my number 3 pick. It is a ton of fun. But as we move into my number 1 and 2 picks, technically speaking, in my mind, I've got a tie for 1 and 2. I'm going to have to rank them because I can't cheat on my own video. But in my brain, 1 and 2 are tied. There's different things about them as to where I put them. Sorry for the interruption. I wanted to talk about the single biggest thing you can do to support my channel, and that's to become one of my official patrons by supporting me financially directly on my Patreon page. If you do that, you get kind of special influence into my page in that I ask my patrons every month what movie would they like me to review, what subject do they want me to address in a video, and essentially they get a personalized video made directly for them each month. I also give them special influence into my future projects I'm working on, give them shout outs, and like in this video right here, I put a list of their names up on the screen because I want to support their channels as well. So if you'd be willing to support my channel because you're a big fan of what we're doing and you want me to continue doing this, please consider supporting me on Patreon. With all that said, let's continue. But for me, coming in at number 2 is going to be, because I gotta break the tie, Spider-Man 2. This is a phenomenal movie. It's one of the great classic comic book movies that had kind of started, kicked off, and established this modern era of comic book movies that we're in right now. And it's a wonderful continuation of what we got in the previous film, where we've now got a Peter Parker who's full on an adult and he's Spider-Man and he's trying to figure out what to do with his life and how to balance all the things going on. And he's trying to decide, do I want to be Spider-Man? Work into that with Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. And it just makes for an interesting story where they go with it. And all in all, I mean, just a wonderful continuation of the previous film, a great villain that's kind of shows up most of the villains in the MCU, that you understand where he's coming from and gives some heroic restoration of arcs in it. Once again, this movie, not once again, but this movie has several of the best moments of any Spider-Man movies. My favorite sequence in all the Spider-Man movies is the train sequence. Just so well crafted in the way it's handled, in understanding the idea of New York City and their loyalty to themselves, and the way they treat him after he saves them. I mean, that's my favorite. Just such a great sequence in the way it's handled, as well as kind of when you move towards the end of the movie, and where it kind of goes with the reveals and the climax, the third act, where you care about it. And it's not like, the world's about to end. It's trying to save some people and redeem a bad guy who's done some horrible things. And you get some great reveals in there as Mary Jane discovers who this Spider-Man fellow is. All in all, a great movie. Why is it not number 1 on my list? And that goes back to, I've never fully bought into the stuff where he starts losing his powers. Even rewatching it a week ago, I was like, I don't buy it. I don't fully buy what they're doing here. And the idea that, whoops, I just can't walk on a wall anymore, or can't climb a wall anymore because of, I never went for it. And so for that reason, I dinged it. But if that was handled a little bit, if that was different, if you could rework that a bit, this would be my number 1. It's a better structured film overall and tells a more fluid narrative. But like I said, I really want to make him a tie. I can't do it on my own list. Coming in at number 1 then is going to be the original Spider-Man. Now, this movie, in a lot of people's eyes, kick-started the modern era. It was the one that kick-started these big blockbuster comic book movies. Now, for me, I'd kind of say X-Men, but this was a much bigger opening and kind of like smashed box office records. I mean, this one just kind of like started the idea that comic book movies are the dominant movies and they make a ton of money when they're done right with the right characters. And that's what this movie did, because they did it right. And it's another one of those movies where you look at what came before this, and they weren't able to do these types of special effects and the flying with the CGI and a convincing Spider-Man the way it's done in this. You could not do it before this. And the reason this movie smashed records and was so exciting is because we watched it and we went, wow, they can do this. We can actually make movies like this now. And they pulled it off so well. It's such a good classic telling of the Spider-Man mythology, and it's got kind of an aw shucks kind of quality to it, especially with Peter Parker and the way high school's handled, and that you want to have one version of Spider-Man that's told like that. Now, Andrew Garfield kind of had a very different take on Peter Parker. Tom Holland has a very different take on the character, but a classic nerdy Peter Parker. That's what we get in this, and it works. And for me, I really like the way this movie plays out. I like origin stories. And so seeing this one kind of play out through all the parts of it works out wonderfully for me. Green Goblin with William Dafoe in there. I think is so much fun and so hammy and over the top in the performance, but it works because it's this Sam Raimi movie that balances the camp and kind of horror in parts and the action and the heroism. He's able to balance all of those different balls in this movie so well that he pulls it off. And things that if you tried to do what William Dafoe's doing in this movie in an MCU movie, it's ridiculous, it's over the top, but it fits in the world that was built in this movie. So all in all, Sam Raimi did something really incredible. It actually brings me a great amount of joy that it's Sam Raimi is the guy that created the mega blockbuster comic book movie of the modern era. Because I grew up watching the Evil Dead movies and could quote the whole movie Army of Darkness to you. And so that he was the one brings so much joy to my life. And this movie holds up. It really works well still to this day. Things about it can feel dated simply because we're so used to the MCU tone, or we're so used to the DCEU, or not DCEU tone, but the DC darker tone, that this Sam Raimi tone that actually still has some camp in it might feel dated, but I think it's actually aged well. It's just we're not used to camp the way it was used in this. So it's a really good movie. Anyway, that's my take on the 6 Spider-Man movies ranked from worst to best. Please give me your list down below in the comments section. I'd love to hear what you guys have to think about it. Comment on each other's lists. Tell me your favorite Spider-Man, because maybe your favorite Spider-Man isn't actually your favorite franchise, because maybe you love the Raimi films, but you're not crazy about Tobey Maguire, or vice versa, or however all that works. Give me your thoughts on all of it. I would love to get some lively discussion to talk about Spider-Man, because you guys have been asking for this video for like a month now. Here it is. It is finally here. Let's get the discussion started. And if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, and I do these ranking videos every single weekend. I got a new one that comes out, and some weeks I put out a couple of them out, because I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. So join me in the comment section. Let's get some lively discussion going on, and thank you so much for watching.